I spoke earlier with the Agriculture Minister, Murray Watt, who ruled out closing the border to Indonesia despite calls from some farmers to shield Australia from foot and mouth disease. Let's get some analysis on this and other issues of the day. Professor Mark Kenny from the ANU joins me. Mark, thanks for your time. It is a tricky one, but the Farmers Federation say there shouldn't be a shut border. I spoke to one prominent producer in WA who says there should, others like Barnaby Joyce saying there should. It'd be a disaster if foot and mouth were to hit our agriculture sector. $80 billion a year they're talking about.
Yeah, and that's the problem, isn't it? Getting the balance right, getting the timing right, making the right call here. I think what we've seen here is that there's a mix of views, and there's even a mix of views within the opposition. David Littleproud is not for closing it off. The ramifications of closing the border to a close trading partner, a friend and everything else, the ramifications of that are quite serious. As we know, it's 11 years since the live export ban. Labor, suffered a lot of political damage for that, as did the industry. So Labor's going to be treading very carefully here. There's also I think, the whole sort of pandemic mentality is still around, and so we know that borders can be shut. We've just done it, right? But does that mean we should do it again? It's interesting that, as I say, Littleproud, the former agricultural minister, is not for it. Murray Watt quite clearly signalling that that is not on the agenda. But it is one of those things where were foot and mouth disease were we to get an outbreak here, then the decision not to have closed that border, even if only temporarily, might look to have been the wrong call.
We've got the Parliament returning next week. On the agenda, there's the economic statement towards the end of next week. The first indication of what the priorities are from Mr Albanese and his government on the bills, the climate bill, aged care bill, the Jobs and Skills Australia, and also paid family and domestic violence leave. These are released as his priorities, and at the same time a lot happening on the economic front with the RBA review announced this week as well, Mark.
Yeah, there's a real sense of activity, isn't there? I mean, a lot of these things are kind of at the architecture stage rather than necessarily actually driving change, but there is certainly a bit on the dance card of the government, new government. It's been a while since the election, quite a long break between winning an election and Parliament sitting. There's been a lot happening on the international stage, as we know, since then. But yeah, there's quite a sort of a queue now of significant legislation that's going to dominate early. And of course, there's this other issue about all of the newbies in the Parliament, particularly the crossbench, those people wanting to make contributions to some of those bills, like in relation to the 43% climate, the 2030 emissions cut goal. But that sort of intersects with their desires also to make maiden speeches, or first speeches. Used to be called maiden speeches. Shouldn't call them that anymore. So yeah, there's going to be quite interesting to see. There's sort of internal politics. I think a lot of us who've been around for a long time are going to watch what it's like in the Parliament. Visually, I think the Parliament's going to look quite different. Where we used to sit looking down on the horseshoe of Parliament. There's going to be a lot more people on the crossbench, and because most of those are women, they're not going to be wearing black and blue suits like you and I are, a bit more colour and a whole different feel, I think, about it. And it'll be interesting to see how those dynamics play out as well.
Plus Albanese versus Dutton across the dispatch box will be an interesting dynamic to watch. And at the same time, as we talk about all these other issues the government wants to get on the front foot on, commitments they've made at the election, they're still trying to manage issues as they pop up. We spoke about one with FMD, the foot and mouth disease, but the energy dramas are not over yet, are they?
No, they aren't over yet, and we've had that intervention now again to secure gas supplies for Victoria. There being inadequate supplies there. We know the winter's been particularly cold in Victoria recently, and the demand for gas has been high. So we've had those sorts of interventions. This crisis that we've been dealing with hasn't gone away, and that's interesting. On the matchup between Dutton and Albanese, that's going to be quite interesting. They're both reasonably good performers, I think, at the dispatch box. They're both, of course, former managers of government business. So they sort of know how the Parliament works. They're on top of the tactics and the rules and so forth. That's going to be fascinating to see how it goes. But I think what we've seen from Albanese is that there's a different Albanese in government from the one that was on the campaign trail. He's grown in confidence. You wouldn't say he's grown into the job at this stage because it's too early to sort of make that call. We haven't even had Parliament sit yet, but he's certainly looking more more confident, and I think we'll all be watching with great interest to see the sort of command that he brings to the chamber, and what's the demeanour of the former government now on the other side of the parliament, and perhaps looking to try and make some early gains.
I don't think Albanese will be underestimating Peter Dutton, someone he's known for 2 decades, and Peter Dutton, for all the criticisms he might cop on social media and so on, he is a very potent communicator. And I think Labor would be foolish to be underestimating him in the parliamentary chamber or anywhere else.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, Peter Dutton, a bit like Peter Costello, perhaps doesn't translate well on television, but is quite popular with his colleagues, has a certain sort of magnetism about him, I think, to his colleagues, a bit of charisma or whatever it is. That might, some people might find that an odd observation, but he's one of those politicians that is more effective in person and in the chamber than perhaps he translates on television. So, Albanese would be wrong to underestimate him. And of course, Dutton has in his mind the idea of going hard. Now, whether that's a mistake or not, I think we'll know over time. Personally, I suspect it's a pretty high-risk sort of exercise. But it does, he has the sort of Abbott model in his mind, come out hard and basically shake the government from the beginning and just keep sort of punching. It'll be interesting to see how he goes at that and whether that does actually bring some mistakes, some wrong decisions, or some sort of hiccups from the government.
Yeah, I look forward to seeing it too. It will be intriguing to watch the dynamics. Mark Kenny, great to see you from the ANU. Talk to you soon.
Thanks, Kieran.